Hey traders, this is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Wednesday, March 3rd. So another big red day today, another big move out of growth. We'll talk quite a bit about that today. We talked about it in yesterday's video. I feel like I'm saying the same things. I'm kind of blue in the face, but I still see some a lot of questions. A lot of people, when I say something on Twitter, they seem to want to insult me about it. They say that I'm wrong, a couple things. So I don't mind. I'm happy to kind of explain these things, and that's what these videos are for. And we'll talk about what to do, I think, on days like this, and which very, very easy not to do much, but I'll get into that. But these days are hard. They're hard for everybody. I'm down money today because even I've been talking about the last few days about having more value, but I'm not 100% out of growth, right? So I'm in a semiconductor. I'm in applied materials that was down today. I'm in Deere that got hit today too. So I'm not unscathed in this, but I try to and that's just how I trade normally, right? I'm going to have exposure to equities. It's very rare when I get down to 0% in equities. It's very rare when I get down to like 85 or 90% out of equities in my trading account. So I have some exposure, but I have enough to kind of just weather the storm and realize that there will be better days. And basically what I try to do is get out of days like this with a little bit of loss, where it's just not a big deal to me, because I know I can recoup it in the way that I trade. So that's kind of a quick, and I'll go through some of those names. What else did I lose? I lost a little bit of money in a Baidu call spread. That's fine. That'll go to zero. I lost a little bit of money in a couple of just small things, like here and there, just being stupid, taking shots on things. But that's just, that's how it is for me. What I really try to do on days like this is just not to overcommit. I always get a ton of questions about, do you think this is a good buy? And do you think this is how about this name? Is this place a good, a good time to buy this name? And it's really, I will tell you, for all of that, it's too early. It's you really, when things are falling as fast as they're falling, you can't pick a bottom. You have to kind of let it play out and find out where the buyers come back into. So that's just something that you learn with trading, right? When you're young and when you're newer trader, I used to do this too. You're like, wow, this name's down 5%. I can get this so much cheaper than it was 2 weeks ago, right? But what happens is, there's something that's going on that's bringing that name down 5%, right? And I'm speaking very generally, right? As you can tell, I'm not speaking about any particular name, but it's a lot of growth names, right? But you look and you'll say, geez, I can get this name down 5 or 7. It's down 8%. Look at this. It's a great buy, right? But the issue is that it may fall 15%. It may fall 20%. So it may fall 25%. So you just don't know. So let's begin to talk about that a little bit, and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're talking about is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations, anything like that. But here's the price action for the indices, right? Big move in the Qs, right? So I'll zoom in here a little bit. I always put this on Twitter as well. So if you can't see this because the video is not in high def yet because it hasn't rendered, you can follow along by looking at what the screen print that I put on Twitter, right, that has the video link. So, but yeah, here's the main story, is that the Qs, you're going to hear me talk about this quite a bit, right? It's the repricing of growth, right? So what does that mean, the repricing of growth? Well, it means all these names that everybody's been hiding in, and hiding is probably a bad way to say it, but they've been adding to these names, and these names have been huge areas of success because they've done extremely well, and some businesses have done very well during the COVID lockdown over the last year, right? We're about a year, since that's happened, and there's been a number of names, digital transformation names, right? Cyber names, software names, internet names, right? They've excelled while the country is in lockdown. Well, it's happening, right? And we've I hope that you've known that this was going to take place, right? The good news is that we're getting out of COVID. We're turning the corner on COVID. That is some really great news. We've got 3 vaccines, right? We've got the 3rd vaccine, right? President Biden said today that hopefully by the end of May, all the adults in the U.S. will be vaccinated, right? So this is coming to an end one way or another, and it's a really good thing, unless something bad happens, like some type of variant, which I hope not. But that's the good news from an investment landscape. The bad news is there's a lot of money that's coming out of all these shutdown plays, right? And the repricing is, and I'm not a big valuation person. I'm just not, right? I follow trends, I follow price, but I know enough to get by. So, for example, right, Zoom was a big thing, right, yesterday. Well, what's the price to sales on Zoom, right? The price to sales ratio, right? So this is a multiple of what their sales is 36 times, right? That is a very hefty premium. I'll give you an example. Now, this is not a name that I like, but just for comparison purposes. Again, I don't want to buy this name, but look at the difference in the pricing, right? The price, right, which is this thing, this 122, over the amount of sales. The multiple is 1.5 times. That's it, right? Or, trying to think of another name, right? Another name that's doing well right now is Oracle, right? Oracle, the price to sales is a 5, right? It's a big difference between a Zoom, which has to continue to grow like this and grow faster and faster and faster. If not, this is going to catch up with the price has to come down so that the multiple is not so high. And what happens is if there's a change in story, right? If all things are equal, and let's say that COVID continues, right? Then a name like this is more in demand. People are going to want to buy Zoom, right? Now, what I said last night on Twitter was, and some people, try to beat me up over it, because Kathy Wood bought more shares of Zoom last night. And what I said yesterday was, I said, while Zoom is a great company, and I use it and subscribe it, in my opinion, the world is beginning to reopen. Some people will begin to use it less. Now, and same goes for Netflix and Roku, I said, right? Netflix, Roku, they've been great companies. Now, again, people were like, Roku, you don't know what you're talking about. But yes, I do. They need more and more growth because of the multiple. Right? So I know, I get it. Roku is a fabulous growth story. But look at the price to sales. It's 26. Right? So you need more and more and more people to be sitting at home and streaming and on Zoom, not the reverse, right? So if the growth stalls just a little bit in Roku or Zoom, right? Then what's going to happen is the price comes down, and that's what's going on right now, right? Because they're so expensive. Okay? So again, it doesn't mean that Roku is a bad company. They're a fabulous company. Same thing with Zoom. But if they do not grow at the same clip that they were growing when there was a global lockdown, it has to change, right? Or it's going to change. I shouldn't say it has to, because there's no have to. But that's the way that you have to think about these things. They're so expensive. And that's what's going on. So, a couple of comments from the room were, hey, this is relentless. This is, it's not. Because if you zoom out, right, Oct is another one that's getting hit. But, okay, let's look at Zoom, right? So, and where Zoom was. Where is it? It's at 341, right? It did get a high to 588. Look at where it was a year ago. You have to, I mean, so where are we, right? So we're in March. Where's March of last year, right? It was $112, right? So you're telling me that you think that this should just continue to keep going up, even though the world is changing, right? And that's the point that I'm trying to make. Again, Zoom is not going away. People are going to continue to use it, but the growth, there are going to be, not everybody, Definitely not everybody. You hear about all kinds of companies that are making permanent changes, but there are some people who are going to go back to work, right? Kids, for example, all kids at schools are on Zoom. They're going to be going back to school eventually. They're not going to be using Zoom as much, right? So that means the growth comes down a little bit. Okay, so sorry to be dramatic about this, but people really were like, telling me I didn't know what I'm talking about, like, and yes, and some of these things, right? This fast forward, as Kathy Wood likes to say, this has put a fast forward on digitalization. I agree, but that doesn't mean it just has any multiple and any price is right. So that's a thing that's the way that I would look at it. The other thing too about uh, you, these Kathy Wood purchases. I am a big fan of Kathy Wood and ARK and what they've done. But this nonsense that's been going on for months with people looking to see what they buy and sell every night. Really, if you're a savvy investor, what you should be doing is saying, oh, Kathy Wood bought, Palantir last week at, whatever, $26, $27, right? If this thing goes down to $15, oh, no, I'm sorry, that's a lot. But let's say it goes down to $20. You could be like, hey, well, Kathy Wood is a good investor. She has a 5-year time horizon. She bought this thing at 26. Well, hey, it's down at 18. Maybe I want to, as long as I have a support level and as long as I have something to trade against, maybe you kind of take a shot knowing that she is a prominent investor and got in higher. You could, like, that's a better way to think about it. I'm not saying to do that either, but this phenomenon about everybody tweeting out what she buys and she sells and then trading it higher in the after hours market is complete garbage. And I've been saying this for has been saying this for months. That's how you really get hurt doing something like that. And I think people are starting to realize that. And I think what I would like to see is people stop tweeting it out. It's moronic, because you don't have the same time horizon as she does. And if you did, then you should just buy the ETF. So that's my story with that. But and I've said this for weeks, right? I've been for weeks and for months, right? I talked about when she was buying Unity software up here, and everybody was started to buy it and post charts of Unity software. It does not look good. If you use technicals in your trading at all, at what point has this been a buy for you since this reported on earnings and started falling? There is nothing on this, right? I talked about this version point of control as a possible place to take a look at this thing. Now, it's still around there. It's still around that same level, but you want to see some confirmation, right? As a technical trader, meaning price at least going above the 5-period moving average, right? That's why I have this on my charts, right? To tell you that price is below with price below the 5-period moving average, it shows the sellers have control, right? Until you can also get into value here at 110.32. That would show me that somebody cares in this name, right? Funds, not just one fund, not just one buyer, is starting to accumulate this name. And I can't tell you when this name stops going down, and to just stick your thumb out in the wind and say, oh, I'm going to buy it because it's down. Well, you don't have any confirmation on this chart anywhere that says it's done going down, right? Maybe you have a support level that if you want to trade against it would be 98, which would be the low, but you're just guessing, right? Because there's been no buyer showing up in this name. So, all right, so I'm really kind of preaching in this video, but I hope that this sinks in so that you don't just buy things because someone else, some other fund, is buying something because they have a 5-year time horizon or some other time horizon, right? And that's a long time for people. I know that a lot of people who are trading, in my trading room and on Twitter, do not have a 5-year time horizon. so it's these are important things to learn as you're going through. And the longer that was going to go on, the phenomenon of ARK bought this, I'm going to go chase it up $3 after the close. It's a dangerous game to be playing. And and there should be a reality check, and I think that's happening now. Okay, so let's talk about a couple other things, right? So I talked about the repricing of growth, and I hope that makes sense. And if it doesn't, you can, and if you don't agree with me, that's fine. Everybody has different opinions, right? Different opinions make what's called a market, where there's buyers and sellers. Everybody has different opinions. That's my opinion. If you don't like it, that's fine. You could buy some of these things, right? You don't have to listen to me, but it's my opinion. So what has been going on, right? And we know that for now, all these areas that no one wanted to touch because they were more sensitive to foot traffic, to just reopening plays, right? Those are now more in demand, and they're cheap, right? So that's basically what's going on, right? People are going to travel more, not just vacation, but if people are going to start going to work, they're going to be filling up their gas tank, and oil's going to, as oil has been rising, right? So these are the things that you should be thinking through, right? Not just, hey, this stock's down 5%, I'm going to buy it because it's down 5%. Have some reasoning, have some reasons, and not just because someone else is buying it. Okay, so it's very important, and the more that you could kind of do this reasoning and have more of a process, and not buying something because of it's a fund or because on a message board somebody said everybody's buying this, let's go after it, right? Do independent thinking about your process. It's very important, especially on days like this, right? So I haven't gone over the indices, before I go over the indices, right? So this is the chart that I showed about week ago, week and a half ago. IWM is now basically caught back into this normal downtrend that IWM versus Qs was, right? And I've been showing this chart over and over and over, and I apologize for showing it over and over and over, but this is important stuff, right? So when you ask yourself, right, how far did growth outpace value in the last year since March? This is it, right? So this is a 5-year chart. We know that growth usually outperforms value over time, right? And looking at a 5-year chart. However, look how far it got in front of it, right? Why did it do that? Well, because there was a global shutdown. Some names did very well. Some names got hit because nobody wants to own them. So so it's a retracement right now, right? So I've said, and about a week ago, I talked about this has a ways to go, right, before things get back to normal. Now, we're not completely reopened now, right? So it doesn't have to retrace all the way back there right away, and it could go in waves, just like we saw on Monday, growth outperformed. But what happened, right? People took their profits in growth, right? So it could kind of be like that. So if I were to make a prediction, which I don't like to make a lot of predictions, but if growth growth will outperform a day or two here and there, but you're going to probably be seeing more people sell the rip in growth until this repricing, it gets somewhere to more of a normal level, right? So again, look at what happened with IWM and Qs, right? IWM caught back to where it should be in terms of this trend. All right? This is not close yet. This is just beginning, in my opinion, right? Or where it could get to. Again, I don't necessarily think this gets in a straight line, as I've been talking about over the last week. It's going to be bumps, and you could see, for example, right? Did IWM go up straight line versus Qs? No. There was various days where the Qs outperformed, right? But the overall direction, and it started back basically in October, where IWM started to outperform, that's been going on for months. I think that could continue for a number of months too. All right, and you've also have the interest rates going on as well too. So that's part of it as well. So you got interest rates, you got the country, you got the country reopening, and that's the story right now. So if we go now, what I would do with your growth names, right? Again, my opinion is not to get out of 100% of growth and into value. I've been saying that the last few days. But look for names that are doing something different. For example, right? I've showed this name, CALX. Look at, I mean, there are going to be star performers, and that's kind of the way I would think about it. Is find the ones, be pickier in growth, right? Before it was what's the right term? It was just easier to find. I can't think of the right term I'm thinking of, but yeah. So you could pick any particular software name a couple months ago, and it would do well. You have to be choosier, right? And so for me, I look at a name like PayPal into the 50-day moving average, where it was last week. We'll see if it holds here. That's those are the types of things. Even though this was another big underperformer today, down 5%, but I think that there's still some, some chance, and I know where I'm going to be wrong here, right? If this thing breaks, right, I get out of it because I'm wrong, right? I always have ideas, right, about buying the dip in certain things and so forth. But if the levels don't hold, I'm not going to argue with price, right? So that's the bottom line, right? I'm going to have ideas about things that I think could work, but if they don't hold, I'm out, right? My stop in this, I put a stop at 250, which is last week's low in this, because you could see here's my trades for the day. Las Vegas Sands I talked about yesterday, that worked well. I got out of that right away because I didn't know that there was going to be a story about Melvin Capital up more than 20% in February. Wow, that's a different headline. Good for them. Las Vegas Sands, so I got out of this. There was a story overnight about how they're selling casinos. So I just decided to take my profits, and I actually moved into Wynn, right? So Wynn, I actually hit a target in Wynn. Again, it's a reopening trade. I talked about this in yesterday's video. I'll be going to Vegas in September, provided that everything goes the way it's going, right? And I won't be on a Zoom call in in Las Vegas. Again, I'm a little bit different, right? But I do take more, I don't know. I'm not risk averse, put it that way. I also got into some XLF. We talked about JP Morgan in the pre-market session. JP Morgan worked pretty well. It did retreat back. Again, it's very difficult to these value rotations because growth is such a big part of the index, right? The more that growth gets hit, the more it just brings down everything. So that's kind of why you have to try to be as well conservative, even with the value names that look like they're doing better. All right. What else did I do here? NCLH. I got 2 targets in NCLH today. That's a trade that I put on, I think, on Monday. I tried a little bit of XOP. I got 1 target and reverted back, so I cut it. Right, and that's how I'm trading right now. Deere, I mentioned, is one of the names that I'm not doing well in, that I have a little bit of a loss in. Tech, where did this finish for the day? So Tech was something we saw calls in, and this was, right in the wheelhouse of what I'm looking for, right? A material name, a name that has some exposure to, a couple different things, a couple different things like zinc, copper, smelting, mining, right? That's kind of what I'm into, right, for this week. AA was one of our names that was on the TTG watch list trade, very nice, right? I mean, so we're hitting some of these trades quite nicely, right? The trade of the day that I talked about was in the morning, was up 6% today, right? This is TX. This is another steel name, one of the best looking steel names I've seen. Also, I like this RS, Reliance Steel and Aluminum, right? Steel and aluminum, right? And again, this is why I stick with the outperformers. But if you go back to Alcoa, look at where this thing was, $51, right? A couple years ago. Now, again, that was even before COVID that this thing was in a downtrend. So look at it's much different looking, right? So, I think these types of things are the names to buy on the dips, right? So everybody likes that buy the dip phrase. I would be buying dips in Alcoa and some of the banks right now, right? Unless it changes, right? So I mentioned. So what else? So tech. I got a target on that. I tried Roku puts, but it's tough trading puts, right? Because I think Roku. Yeah, and I guess I left some money on the table. It's just really tough because at some point buyers will pick this thing up. But I think Roku can get down to 337. I really do. I think that's where it could maybe find some support. And even further, maybe 311. I got out of I took one stop today, Micron. Um, you know, had good numbers. Maybe I got out of this a little bit too early, but I would rather play a little bit more on the conservative side, and that's basically it, guys. I'll talk about the indices and where they are. We have not taken out last week's lows. We did. This looks oddly familiar to last week. We talked about this the last couple days that we could not break higher. We're still making lower highs. Right, here's your peak. Lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. Eventually we're going to have to, reverse this relationship. When does that happen? I don't know, right? And I think until that happens, right? Because everybody wants to know when. We don't know, right? We have to be defensive until we know that the selling has abated. Right? Qs weaker, right? They actually right around last week's lows, right? And where could this get to? We don't know yet, right? I mean, what if this comes all the way down to 291? That's another $20. So I don't do this to scare anybody, but I'm just saying that there's just not a lot of support, right? And you should be looking at some of these things and realizing that they're changing. Oops, that VPOC's gone. But yeah, 291 lines up on the 1 hour time frame and on the daily. So I hate to do this to people to say that if you think today's bad, these things can go down a lot further. They really can. There's nobody saying that they shouldn't, right? And somebody made a comment to me. They're like, "Oh, well, Powell and the Fed are gonna da 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 da." That doesn't mean that they're gonna make investors buy things in the Qs. They can make them buy things in value, right? Steel, materials, financials, and energy, So I would keep that in mind, guys. Is that please, again, I'm not giving you any advice, but please do not try to pick a bottom just because something is down a lot, right? You have to zoom out and realize how far these things have gone up. Right, and the other thing is, right, and that's why I said today I'm down money. I'm not over concerned about it, but I really try not to stick out my neck. And the goal, like for me on days like this, is to try to sit on my hands as much as possible, right, and to realize that you're not bigger than the market, right? This market will do whatever it wants to do, so it doesn't care if one name is down 8% or 9%. Right? If it wants to go down, it's going to go down, and it's going to go down, a faster way than it goes up too. All right, guys. So again, please try not to scare anybody, but I just want people to be to look at these things and realize that you've got a major break. You got a break of the 50-day moving average here in the Qs. Right, and that's something that we really haven't seen since back here, and it looks different to me. So bear that in mind, guys. All right, have a great night. If you have any questions, right, and again, if you have a different opinion than me, it's fine, right? That's what makes a market, right? But I tell you what I see on the screens. I tell you what I'm feeling. I tell you what I'm trading, and you could see all that as I show that in every one of these videos. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.